Sparks, sparkles, sparkling, sparkled, sun on the ocean, mica and granite, stars in darkness, metallic candy apple, 57 Chevy. My quiet, kind, oppressed grandmother loved anything that sparkled. My grandfather didn't, though he did love listening to opera on those old 78 RPM records. Even though he was completely tone deaf, he loved to hear the emotions, apparently, because he didn't have any, and the opera always made him cry. I used to go crabbing with him sometimes in the tidal flats. That was fun, and my grandmother had to shell and clean all the little crabs, which was not. But they had buttered toast, which was glory because it was not margarine, and root beer floats. I loved it there, so quiet, so peaceful, so incredibly repressed. He sold insurance most of his life, so did his son, my uncle, who was in the Marines in the Pacific and saw most of his friends blown up in the horrible stench and gore of death all around. Sort of like the insurance business, actually, if you think about it, though I guess there wasn't any insurance at Iwo Jima. And he had a terrific sense of humor, my uncle did. We all loved to be with him because he laughed so much. His children are all a little weird, though awfully nice. And my favorite relatives, which is really true, and not just in case they ever read this, but I know he didn't think of himself as a hero and hated having sold insurance all his life after the war. He said, "What did I ever do for anybody selling insurance? Bah!" But he is sort of a hero to me, even though eventually he drank too much and seemed sort of sad in the end. I guess that's what war does to people if they're very, very lucky. I see the picture of him now that my mother had, standing straight and tall in his snappy dress whites, thinking about heading off into the great western ocean, where I'm sure he could see the sun glittering with menace on the somber surface of the dreaming sea. For my aunt. Driving into work today, I heard about Julie Garland at Carnegie Hall in 1961, and it made me really, really sad, her singing Over the Rainbow at 38. Because we used to watch The Wizard of Oz every year on TV, and those monkeys, my God, were so terrifying. And then she drank and drugged so terribly, even though everyone loved her so, or their image of her. And it was about the same time I got to know and kind of really like my aunt, who gets all muddled in my heart with her, because they both went downhill pretty fast and dragged a lot of other people with them. And I feel like this whole gray and rainy morning in the mist should be dedicated to them both. Brilliant, blazing lights, so fast, going so dark. Air popper. I bend down to pick up something off the floor under the table. I think I know what it is. Yep, it's a squashed fragment of popcorn that got dropped, no doubt by me, last night at dinner and stepped on. I lick my finger and touch the flat white bloom to raise it from the floor. It's thin as a chip of titanium white and nearly weightless as it glides from my hand in an eddy of early summer air, escaping into the far-off clouds in the grand and azure skies over Giverny, where it belongs. Bagman. That all the important stuff is going on in some central location, disclosed or not, is the story we get all the time. I prefer noodling around on the edges, where things are inconsequential, and am uncomfortable in foci of power. This makes me feel guilty sometimes, since war is, no doubt, interested in me. But a hero is Matisse at Cimiez, with his colostomy bag and his wheelchair, and his Lydia watching him as he makes paper cutouts of ecstatic yellow detonations and dancing figures on colored ground, which may not be as shattering, but yet remains. The Dung Woman. In Agra, there are surly urban monkeys. They like to hide and are very hard to see. Their faces swell convex behind open windows. Snap go their enormous teeth. In my world now, where the Dung Woman stands in line at Wendy's, but there is no place to lay down her dung. Everyone is trying to take her picture as she orders a burger with fries and a shake. They do not want her to put down her dung. She has been Instagrammed all over North America. She is now a digital negative of her spacious self, speechless, wide-eyed and exposed, with her burger, her fries, and her sterile, disembodied dung. Coke. I would very much like to write another poem now, but my attention has been wandering around looking for something to write about, and nothing has happened. Sometimes it looks out the window at the bird feeder, or the trees, or the cold, gray, rainy day in general, which makes it seem like a good day to write another poem since I'm not going out there. And sometimes it wanders in the house, like upstairs among my books maybe, Borges or Bachelard, or in the kitchen to look in the refrigerator, or it notices the pain in my knee and in my back, and the other pain in my back, and in my tooth, and you see how unhelpful that is. Or it does an inventory of my moods so far today, which is much more useful, but very inarticulate and too hard. So up it goes into outer space, to Andromeda, or Betelgeuse, than which there is no better name. Then it goes all abstract and tries to run its fingers over numbers. And then we take a theological turn, looking over at angels, who are too bright to look at, but you can sort of hear them crackle. And it looks up at God, who reminds it of Zeus and Athena, who smell all sweaty because Greece is, after all, very hot, which reminds me that once I was on Capri with a girl I knew from college, where the sea is an extraordinarily beautiful deep blue, and there are ruins everywhere with broken columns of swirling marble, and we were so hot and thirsty, we buy a couple Cokes in battered green glass bottles from an old man in a shabby store in the stifling shade. But they're warm, and our mouths fill with sweet, swelling foam, which is impossible to drink, and we laughed so hard the tears are still streaming down our faces. Nuts. I never found out what really happened to her. I lived with her for a while, completely platonically, her and her dog Simone, after de Beauvoir. She was borderline psychotic then, as I found out listening to her on the phone one night, talking to a crazed devil who was trying to destroy her mind, it seemed. So I called her shrink, who told me it had been him on the phone, which really flipped me out. I was so naive and young back then. She was probably the smartest person I knew, except maybe for the brother of a good friend who went to Harvard to do comparative lit and used to lose it periodically, and we have to go get institutionalized for a while. And then there were two other guys I knew really well who had been in the funny farm, which is what they called it, together for a while. And one of them killed himself in the garage eventually, which was so awful for everyone. It was just too much for him in the end, and he couldn't stay alive anymore. I think maybe some people are just so broken, there's nothing really that can be done. And then there were a couple people I knew who did drugs that fried their brains, and one of them just got really sort of mild and empty. I don't know what happened to him, but it changed his personality completely. And the girl who had a strange nickname, I'm pretty sure they had to come to get her and take her away, and I don't know whatever happened to her either. So I guess I've been awfully lucky, since I am reasonably sane most of the time, in spite of having really bad depressions and manic periods and getting really pretty nearly psychotic for a while. But that was an invasion of the unconscious and the beginning of the really interesting part of my life, though it didn't seem so at the time, and how anybody ever makes it all the way to their death in one intact piece, I have no idea. But maybe nobody does. Droppers. I'm not interested in God, I said, and there was a sudden, very long silence. These aren't really my people, I thought. Well, actually, it didn't occur to me till later, but really they aren't. I am interested in angels, however, and they should have known that, or not actually even angels, but in where they live, which is in between things, where the light is funny and everything shimmers, and where very much strangeness watches and breathes and can make you kind of nervous and uneasy. We should all be uneasy a lot more often. I think it seems to keep us on our toes, ready to jump or run away or towards. If we lived in the jungle, we would always be paying attention in case the jaguars tried to drop down on us. We would be better off if we lived as if we were always about to be dropped down on by very good droppers. I'm looking up. Just what a guy would say. I'm feeling pretty scattered and rattled right now, and what I would like to do if I could just settle down a bit is stare for a long, quiet time at something red. No, not something red, but just it red, all by itself maybe, not a flat panel of probably a light cadmium red, but just be in the space that was itself a red of that color all around me, but no, not really me, I mean, but just my consciousness, because I don't want my arms and legs getting in the way, or Lord knows my belly, which I've become less and less fond of. Or it's more like now I notice it with some slight repulsion in a way I never even thought about it at all before. And now it's getting back at me for all those years of ignoring it, and I don't want to think about my face at all either, but just be in that red place, quietly, and not even breathing or not breathing either, so that there would only be that red in all the world, which there wouldn't be one of either, but just the red all by itself, completely and wholly filling that space. Moon eyes. If someone had snatched out your eyeballs, like in Kill Bill 2, and you had lost your confidence, what would you do? I'm sort of sorry I saw that scene, but the second time it didn't bother me, and I almost thought it was funny, which I find quite shocking. But everything depends on context. The simplest surrealist act consists of dashing down into the street, pistol in hand, and firing blindly as fast as you can pull the trigger into the crowd. That hasn't aged well, has it? And I, too, am looking for my confidence, wondering if what I say looks embarrassing from a distance, even though when I say it, it seems necessary, not profound, but just right. None of us, I guess, get to live unedited, but the criteria keep shifting. It's so fluid. There's no ground there at all, which is fine, but I feel like a puppet with a knot of twisted strings and a crowd of manic angels overhead. There was no ceiling either when Rublev couldn't paint the final judgment, and the fools smeared the perfect walls with mud, and all the painters with their eyes gouged out wandered, agonized and aimless in the magic silent wood, seeking icons of hammered gold and azure blue, eyeless in the colonnades, marching into distance, into fetid swamps where paint swirls in filthy water, where soldiers slog in rotten leather boots in darkness, rank upon rank in mud, where we come up gasping for air. The moonlight shines upon the waters and upon the land. We cannot see the darkness, for we ourselves are dark, and see only silver shining, touching everything under the moon. Dancers. I knew a dancer once, and I've thought about this a lot. Actually, I knew lots of dancers once, but this one got scoliosis or some progressing spine disease, and she had to get a metal pole inserted alongside her spine, which seemed awfully extreme to me, and still does. Imagine having a metal rod screwed in along your spine. What would that do to your life, do you think? I have, for instance, spent the better part of my entire life, which is quite a while now, trying to get a metal rod out of my spine so I can turn into a dancer. It's welded along the right side of my column, which makes me think of Descartes' dream. But my right half is all frozen in place, and I need to loosen it up, and I'm hoping now to do this by paying attention to things, including my heart, which bothers me, because then I start to worry the rhythm is all wrong and thumping in the wrong way. But who wants a 4/4 beat? I always liked time further out with that Miro on the cover, and I got it when I was like maybe 10, and I loved unsquare dance, and used to clap to it with my father, who was really extremely musical, unlike Mom, and sometimes we got it right even though it's 7/4 and really not easy to do, and it seems to me that if I could get everybody clapping along, then the metal rod would shiver once, turn to liquid silver, and drain away in rivulets along the branching pathways of my nerves, silvering all the chakras as it was meant to do. And we could all feel it then, I know we could, and we would all of us laugh gently like they do right at the end of the unsquare dance, when they all come together on that final, perfect beat. Laws of form. I was just lying on the floor looking out the window, and I like the way the branches of the trees are all twisty and, well, branching against the gray, cloudy sky, as there are no leaves on them yet. And I was just looking at them and thinking how much I was enjoying that, which is a French word that means to put joy in. And they were doing that to me, which is, I think, something we should notice more often. It simply gave me a smile to see them there against the sky. And if I were a painter, I would not have wanted to paint them, but would have wanted to paint something that made me feel that same way about a pattern of something against something like that. Which is why I immediately thought of Golgi bodies and nerves and blood vessels and the tunnels ants make underground. Not because I like those things, which I do, but because there is the same feeling there, which is not abstract at all. The feeling is quite concrete, like the smile I had and the lift to the heart, maybe not really a lift, but a little sort of shift, so that the whole of everything is just a tiny bit more alive. And I wonder if it isn't this kind of thing that Plato had in mind when he started out telling people about this idea he had about the forms of things. But then it got all twisted, and he got old and authoritarian, and he wrote the laws, and people took it all wrong. I'll get old too, but I'm not going to write about any laws. Morning in the world. very early this morning as I was doing my push-ups. Suddenly my body was transported, my arms, my legs, my torso, all crucified, hanging in space. And I was inside out then, faster than thought. I was in a Francis Bacon painting, a hanging slab of meat, my insides removed, ribs and spine revealed, but this was not awful as it sounds. I spin in that space, feeling my hands turning inside out too, and now I am the world. Now I am the world, moving anywhere at all. This shift keeps happening. It just happened again. It is very hard to experience. It is an important thing to happen to someone, to feel your hands inside and out simultaneously. My bowels then uncurl like ropes extending to the horizon. I open my mouth and it keeps opening and does not stop. I am an inverted tube, just that, tender skin everywhere, everything sensorium. The wind blows over me. I can travel anywhere. There is nothing human. There is nothing human that is foreign to me. The iron core of the blasted earth, Babylonia, the beauty of excrement, interiors by Vermeer, sign language, bad depression, and the dome of St. Peter's. I am in love with the world, without need. Barclay and Wittgenstein walk into a bar. I am beginning to really like noticing things, and there are so many things to notice. I have a piece of orange pulp stuck between my first and second maxillary bicuspids on the driver's side, and I feel something in my right sock that I've been ignoring all morning. At noon, I will see what it is if I'm not too distracted by the other things impinging, like I ate that orange too fast, which instigates a variety of stimuli, and I am thinking constantly about my children, which is what happens when you have some. So my mind is partly here and partly too elsewheres. Actually, I think there is no here at all. I think that all this business about being fully present is kind of a scam, since I don't see any edges to here and have no idea where it might stop, and it didn't begin at all, and it supposedly just is, which is fine, but what is it? Are you in it? I think so. Otherwise, I wouldn't be saying this, which is really what the noticing is mostly about in the first place. And I feel that the orange pulp is not at all unless I notice it, and that means whether I cry out loud or not. Hey, there's a piece of orange pulp in my teeth. It's a public event, even if I don't say it loud enough for you to hear it. And I haven't even started to tell you about what I actually did during lunch, which intervenes here, and which involved driving several miles, getting gas for the car, and some chips for me, and looking at a used trailer, and talking to a guy about chainsaws and how his Husqvarna won't start, and the long winter, and a really incredible number of other chatty things. And then, as if all that weren't enough, I drove to the bank while listening to Tom Daschle on the radio. I mean, Jesus Christ, no wonder we're all crazy. I think I will spend the afternoon working on that bit of orange pulp between those bicuspids and then just call it a day. Driver. The pile driver is huge and very exciting. Standing next to it is terrifying, so loud the earth shakes all around the vast column in its rusted sheath and cables. But there is no pile driver. I'm just standing in an open field, the blue sky and clouds, the birds, the grass. But there is no field. I'm at my desk. I am writing this. But still, the pile driver is at work. I can feel it. And the blue sky, by God, is there, up above beyond the dropped ceiling and the roof above. I'm afraid that my fingers will be crushed. or that something will break through from the work site. I think they're building the foundation for a cathedral, it could be, or a bridge. They need solid foundations, rammed slowly into bedrock, the rhythmic thunder of it, 5 stories tall. I see the man in the cab with his yellow hard hat. What a thing to do that all day. My hands are on the hard, black rubber balls of the controls. I wear a yellow hard hat. I do this all day, but nobody sees me. The pounding is synchronized with the beating of my heart, so no one hears it. The vast machinery, hidden, thundering underneath my skin. People say I don't seem very relaxed, which is not true. I am relaxed. It's the machinery that does the work. I merely caress these delicate, tender knobs. On poetry. I can do directed thinking, and even undirected and yet broadly philosophical thinking too, like they do in so-called continental philosophies. And I can write persuasive, rhetorically sophisticated prose of several sorts, and I'm happy with that, and I know when to wield the sword, when to cut, and when to thrust, and I know what to say and what things to avoid saying so as not to get into sophisticated forms of trouble, philosophically speaking, as I was well taught, and can do these things with some assurance, like backing and filling with a Cat D9 and building the kinds of structures required for sophisticated and urbane thought. But where I kind of get a bit dazed and confused, like an Inuit in the jungle, is when I engage the imagination in some other ways. I find it hard to know how to control the animals that keep showing up, like these tunicates, for instance, who are sitting on my desk right now and squirting their salty water at me contemptuously and laughing their tiny proto-chordate laughter. I mean, control isn't maybe the point, but for poetry you do need an editorial function, because otherwise anything at all might happen, and what then? Like, for instance, watch this. Oh shit, it's a crocodile, and he's flying in the air. No, it's a bloody damn big dragon from China or Japan, and I do not want to be eaten. So shazam, slice, cut, shrivel, in comes the editor, and he makes it so I don't get eaten. And the damnable dragon shrinks down to the size of an acorn, from which mighty oaks, etc. And I have put him in the pencil box in my drawer, so what the hell kind of decent poem can you, damn it, make when shit like that happens? I don't get it. Adventures in Linguistics. The mud is cracked geometrically. It would make a nice photograph, very artsy, but it's awfully hot and dry. No, wait, it's a torrential downpour in a steamy tropical jungle. Probably Brazil or Paraguay. I see tapirs, I think, or pigs. It's hard to tell at this distance. I just don't know how I feel about anything. It might be snow, and I'm freezing in Donner Pass and about to be somebody's dinner. Or I am definitely in one of Foucault's madhouses. I think that is certainly true as far as it goes. I just wonder, oh look, the glacier is moving, or I think time is accelerated. You can't know which. My mouth hurts where they pulled that molar. And the gum is all pulpy still, which frightens me at night. There could be worms I got swimming in the Amazon, and they will come out of my face or eyes. I like the idea of biodiversity, but parasites are problematic. I feel breakbone fever coming on, and I want to walk a song line to cure myself or take ayahuasca. There are so many little people in my horizons, and they block my way out. Oh God, the weather is so variable, and my moods blast through like household goods in a tornado. We are not in Kansas anymore. Breathing helps, but when I was little, there was no one to ask about this part of life. I'm so glad I do not speak more than one language. There are entirely too many words in this one, and they pelt me from all sides. Here comes a savage horde now, bristling with armaments. They're fording the great river, brandishing fire. I should have spitted myself for the starving families in the snow. I stand and speak words of power, but they overrun our compound, lighting fires as they rage on. Earthquake, thunder, lightning, landslide, firestorm, apocalypse from Greek to reveal, anchored now in the archai. The fury subsides. The waves crash under the breaking sun. The wind howls down. The furniture falls out of the skies, and I stand naked in a gently murmuring rain of words.